So I'm Laura Kender, and I'm the Chief of the Early Childhood Services with MHMR of Tarrant County. We're located in Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we've had the pleasure of having Alina here with us this week, so we're really thankful that she came to visit us, and we're going to all come and visit y'all one day. So we're a very large early intervention program that receives funding through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act at our federal level, and then we also have state revenue that comes into our program. We're a very large program. We serve about 4,000 babies on any given day with about 300 staff, so it's a very, very large. Our services, of course, are provided in the families' homes. Primarily, and we did recognize that what we wanted to be careful about is that we really operated based off of what the research told us was best practice, and that we weren't making decisions just off of what we thought that we knew as early childhood providers, but really what had been researched and thoroughly vetted. So we went down the path of really looking at that, and we did have certain principles that we wanted to find something that would match the principles that the evidence told us. If you meet these principles, then you are providing evidence-based quality services to children and families. The first principle actually is that infants and toddlers learn best through everyday experiences and interactions with familiar people in familiar context. And so what we had to challenge ourselves with that is, I think for many years we've operated with the understanding that we go into the homes and we work with the children. And so we felt like that's what we were doing. But I think what we had to challenge ourselves with is it's not just about taking the clinic into the home and sitting in the living room and working with the child, that we really weren't doing anything different than what we had been doing in a clinic setting. And so we recognize that young children learn best if we can work with them in their regular activities and those things that they do throughout the day, and those things that are presenting perhaps the families with some challenges as well, because that is definitely where the family's interest is needing help with some of those challenges that they have. And so we start our conversations with the families about what does their day look like, and what are difficult times during their days, and how what would they see as being helpful during those difficult times. So that the conversation may have changed from skill-based deficit conversations to more routine-based, this is what our life looks like and this is what we could use help with. So a good example of that is a family that maybe their child, maybe they were having some oral motor or feeding issues of concern with their child, and we may have gone in and done more drill types of things that the families could do with their child. And really what their family was telling us is, we really wish our family could eat dinner together, and could have family mealtime. And so we knew at that point we needed to incorporate that as our goal, is how can this family eat together and have and not have one child who was having meltdowns because feeding was a difficult time of day for that child. So focusing more on how we could make this family's life or help them with making their life better. The second one, which is that we do believe all families with the necessary supports and resources can enhance their children's learning and development. And we strongly believe that. We believe that this isn't for some families, that this is all for all families. We truly believe that all parents want the best for their child, and they want to be able to provide that. Sometimes they do have struggles and they have issues that they need support with, but all families do want the best for their child, and they want to be part of making that happen. And so with this, we do recognize that our job is to come in and support those family members in their ability to be able to provide the best for their child. Not for us to do it for them, but for us to be able to support them. And so we need to meet the families where they're at with what their learning styles are, what their capabilities are, with the ultimate goal of building their capacity so that they can enhance their child's development. So going back to the feeding example, an example of this would be, I had at one point there was a speech therapist that was working with me, and she gave the example of going into a family's home, and the mother had been having great difficulty with being able to feed her baby with the bottle. And the speech therapist went in, and with her, the tricks that she had in her bag, she was able to take the baby, and very quickly the baby was very successful in taking the bottle. And she looked over and the mother was crying. And she quickly realized that what she had done is she had given that mother that message of, I can feed your baby, but you haven't been able to, which was very disheartening and heart-wrenching to see the impact that that had on the mother. And so we know now that our role is to go in, and every successful experience such as that needs to occur between the parent and the baby. And we should not be the ones that are having that success. We should be equipping the parent to be able to have that success. The primary role of a service provider in early intervention is to work with and support family members and caregivers in children's lives. And I point out this one because I've been talking throughout about the family members. We also recognize that many people participate in care of children, and we need to be able to reach out to all of those members that provide support to our children. So we did have to change our behaviors about going into child care centers as well, and move from going into a child care center. It had gotten to where we had trained the child care centers that they knew when we came into the classroom, we were going to take our child and go over in the corner and do therapy with the child. Or sometimes they even wanted us to go in the hall, and do therapy with the child, or down to another room. So we quickly realized that that was not really making much difference for our little ones. And our role is to go into the child care classroom, much as we would when we go into the family's home, identify what routines they're having difficulty with, and how the particular child we're working with might be impacting that, and how we can assist with strategizing and supporting and coaching that teacher so that she can have success every day with not only the child we're serving, but hopefully it'll benefit the other children in the classroom as well. And then fourth, the early intervention process from initial contacts through transition must be dynamic and individualized to reflect family members' learning styles and cultural beliefs and practices. This one we have focused quite a bit over the last couple of years of recognizing how, as much as we have conversation about cultural beliefs, cultural practices, that to be a primary service provider in a family's home and to have that type of a relationship with a family, there has to be a tremendous respect for the cultural beliefs and values of that family, and the recognition that one way of being respectful is to acknowledge that when we come into a family's homes, we may bring things to them that we're able to coach and assist them with, but oftentimes we learn so much from them as well. And so we have to see it definitely as a partnership. And I think that's part of primary service provider approach to teaming, is the recognition of it's a relationship-based approach to services and part as well. Fifth is that IFSP outcomes must be functional and based on children's and families' needs and family identified priorities. So this kind of goes back to that first example that I gave about where typically in the past we may have had a measurable outcome that related to feeding, and we may have been measuring that based on how many ounces the child would take, or what types of textures they would eat, what type of food they would eat. And now you might find that we have an outcome that's more about the routine of mealtime and the child being able to participate in mealtime as a family member and eat the foods that the family eats, those types of things. 6, the family's priorities, needs, and interests are addressed most appropriately by a primary provider who represents and receives team and community support. One of the biggest challenges that our staff had is they had been accustomed to identifying children's deficits and then matching that deficit to a professional that had that area of expertise. So an example would have been a child that had motor concerns, they need a physical therapist. So if we had a child with many of those needs, before long we had a team of 4 or 5 people going into this family's home and providing therapy, typically a lot like what they would have received in a clinic. And so we recognized very quickly that that wasn't working, and usually the way the families showed us is they started no-showing for some of our appointments because we were just overwhelming them too much. So now we have a teaming process. All of our staff are trained to be primary service providers. They're also trained to be case managers. So when we have a child that comes into services, a team of professionals meet together, and that team consists of, we have 20 teams right now of about 10 people, and 10 to 12 people. So they meet on a weekly basis, and on that team, we have physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, dietitians, infant mental health, which are kind of counselors, and we have early intervention specialists, which are similar to teachers. So those people meet on a regular basis, and each week they have a team agenda of things that they focus on, and in that team agenda, they welcome new children to the program. And then that welcome, they talk about what they've learned about this child and family, and then the team decides who best can support this family as the primary service provider based off of what the family's concerns are, and identify who that person will be. Also at that team meeting, they do quarterly checks on babies, and so every baby gets presented back to the team on a quarterly basis to make sure we're receiving the support that we need from each other to be able to provide adequate services to the family. And we talk about primary coaching opportunities. So if I'm a primary service provider working with a child and finding that I'm running into some areas that I feel like I need help with, then I can bring that case back to the team. We staff that, and the team can offer me suggestions. I can even bring videotape if I choose to do that so that we can share it. I can invite the parent to come with me if I want to do that as well. But during that time, we would talk about what supports do I need, and how can my team support me in this. But all of that is about having this primary service provider who matches the family's needs most closely, and then that primary service provider has a team of 9 or 10 people who are across all the disciplines that are now supporting that primary service provider and assuring that they have the level of support to be fully equipped to being able to provide the services to the family. And then lastly, interventions with young children and family members must be based on explicit principles, validated practices, best available research, and relevant laws and regulations. And so this kind of sums it all up. So when our federal law does say that we must operate under evidence-based practices, and so if we're doing things because we've always done it that way, or in school I learned it this way, we must always challenge ourselves. A lot of our staff, they may go to a workshop, they get really excited about some practices that are out there, and what we've done, and David and Melissa have helped us with a tool to really walk through is this evidence-based, and what does the research tell us? I hope this is helpful. This kind of talks about our journey and why we chose to go this route. And again, we've been thrilled to have Alina with us this week, and we wish all the best of luck.